G'day and welcome to the field. My name is JJ. I tell you what, round 7 was a super round of footy. Round 8, which we'll get to at the end of the show, could be the best we've seen in some time. Some of the matchups are to die for. True footy fans will be glued to the TV all weekend long. But let's go back and have a look at some of the bigger contests we saw in round 7. The Blues and the Kitty Cats, what a clash that was. Something truly unique happened in that game as well. I want to explore that. I want to throw it out to the universe and see whether we can get an answer on something that happened in that game as well. What about GWS? Their eruption, the tsunami, it was explosive in disarming and dismantling the Brisbane Lions. They could be done. They looked like a defeated football club in the second half of that game on Friday night there in Canberra. Would have been Thursday night, whatever it was one-way traffic in the second half. And I want to talk about how we're going to fit some of these stars back into the GWS lineup. So Brent Daniels was the unused sub, which to me was a situation where they did not want to use him if they did not need to, but he was probably just fit enough to play if it was or became desperate, but they didn't have to play him. So he's got to find his way back into the 22. Toby Green's back. Sam Taylor will be back or is close to being back. So there's 3 straight away. Steve Coniglio as well is one who needs to come back into that squad. So they are absolutely loaded. We'll talk about how good they are going. The Dockers and the Dogs, this one was potentially a bit of a snooze fest, but both teams said, let's take the game on, let's attack, let's play downhill footy, and let's see what we can do. It was a very entertaining game on Saturday night. Watch that game on Channel 7. And in the end, the Dockers got the job done. And one big reason why the Dockers are up and about, one big reason why their forwards are having more success. Josh Tracy's season has been excellent to this point. Jai Amos, we know when he's out there, he's always a dangerous commodity. But Jordan Clark off a halfback flank, I think he's in the running at this early stage to be an All-Australian. So make sure you check out the 7 AFL socials on Instagram and Twitter. I just break down some of his gut running, his game breaking, line breaking play, his 1-2s, some of the meters gained. And look, the ball doesn't always hit the target, but what it does, it moves with speed. It encourages those forwards to get on the move and look for space and create space. And Clark is doing a fine job off halfback for the Dockers. So make sure you check out the 7 AFL socials this week. Make sure you subscribe and give us a share and a review on the YouTube channel, and those who are listening via the podcast platforms, thanks for doing that. Make sure you keep doing that. I guess on the bad side of things, in Tassie, in Hobart, to be more accurate, what about the Kangas? They are actually getting worse by the week. They're not getting better by the week. They're actually getting worse by the week. Their biggest defeat of the season to the Crows, who have hardly put together a classical season themselves. So it gets worse and worse if you're a Kangaroos fan, and it gets worse and worse, excuse me, from an AFL perspective, because we've got the Eagles up and about. We've got them competitive. Hawthorn, we think are on the right track. We think they'll be competitive more often than not, but the Kangaroos, they remain absolutely listless when it comes to the way they're going about their footy. But we will try and focus on the good stuff here on the field. And to steal a quote from the great Andrew Gaze, my glory-filled days. Let's start with the GWS Giants. I've seen them a couple of times live this year. Saw them play at Mount Barker, where they were good but not great against the Suns. But their performance on Anzac night, and that was a great little spot there by the AFL to put that game on in Canberra. That was a sensational nightcap after the big Anzac Day Classic. But the Giants, it was a good game of footy in the first half, and Brisbane took it up to them. Now, I did, hands straight up, I did think the Brisbane Lions would win because they simply had to win the game. No Toby Green, no Sam Taylor. Coniglio was out, but it didn't matter. In the second half, every player and person wearing a GWS jumper came to work, and they came to play, and they played together, whereas Brisbane, gee, they were disappointing. Gee, they were a disappointing unit. And at times in the second half, it was boys against men stuff. It was witches hat stuff. It was truly training drill stuff from GWS. They completely dominated the second half of that game. And I mentioned, Daniels, Green, Taylor and Canelio need to come back into the team. Who's on the edge? I mean, really, Perryman was outstanding. He's probably one you think to straight away. Ash, he was rock solid, if not better. Cadman, he's probably the least performing forward, but he's a number one overall draft pick who you want to keep developing and improving. Riccardi, but he's the relief ruckman. Do you want to upset the structure? Maybe O'Halloran on the edge, but he'd get a game for basically everyone else. Harvey Thomas is a youngster, and the youngsters, I guess, are always more vulnerable. And Darcy Jones, who was playing his first game in the helmet, he had the GWS orange helmet on. He looked superb. He looked like he was Brent Daniels running around that forward half of the ground. He's super quick. He's clean. He makes quick decisions. He'll be a fan favourite shortly. Surely he can't be out of the team. He performed better than Toby Bedford. Maybe it's someone like a Bedford who I guess we think is entrenched in that 23. Maybe someone like him falls out. Such is the strength of that group. About a year ago, I was really worried about Adam Kingsley and probably by extension the Giants, but they are likely most people's number one seed. We'll find out at the end of this weekend who is probably the number one seed. Carlton and Geelong was absolutely sensational from a neutral point of view. That was a great game of footy to watch. But what it was in the end, it was efficiency versus wastefulness. Geelong were efficient. Geelong capitalised on their turnovers that they created. They were potent from stoppage when they got a stoppage win. They were really staunch in defence, whereas Carlton were wasteful in front of goal with the way they moved the ball at different stages, with the way they defended. Now, they played a good game of footy, but in the end, one team wins and one team does not win. And Carlton will be absolutely filthy because I put this question out to the Twitter sphere and it never answered. So I'll do it again. Carlton did something I don't think's been done for a long, long time, maybe ever. Carlton had more scoring shots in the game. They kicked 100-plus points and lost, which rarely happens. But they won the key stat markers in contested possession, clearance, and inside 50s. They won clearances, contested possession, and inside 50s. They had more scoring shots. They kicked 100-plus points, and they lost the game of footy. Now, people were tweeting at me after the game saying the Cats got lucky and there are a lot of players out for Carlton, and that is very true. There are a lot of good players out of that Carlton lineup. But when you have a look at the paperwork and the stats, and after a game of footy, if you pay close attention, you'll see some of the assistant coaches walking around with a handful of papers about an inch thick. That's all the champion data analysis and numbers and data that gets sent back to the coaches, and they'll pile through that, and they'll absolutely look at that stuff along with a vision for hours and hours after the game. Sometimes you'll even see a senior coach refer to the numbers in that stat sheet in a post-game press conference. I just don't think it's happened either ever or many times before where a team has won the contested possession, won the clearances, won the inside 50s, had more scoring shots, kicked 100-plus points, and lost. If you told me Carlton did those 5 things, I'd say, well, how much? Carlton by how far? But that shows that one of the most important skills, maybe the most important skill, is efficiency, particularly in front of goal. And Chris Scott's men, they did the job. And Carlton, or they'll be left ruining what might have been. It was a September Classic. It was hopefully one we'll see in September. But I tell you what, it was a good game of footy. 87,000 in the house as well. The other difference in the game, I think, and speaking of efficiency, I think the difference, because the Carlton midfield played well, the big boys up front did their bit, the key defenders played good games. I think the difference in the game was the team's respective half-forward flankers, the hard-running guys. So I'm talking about Tyson Stengel, Brian Myers, and Brad Close versus Matt Owies, Corey Durden, and Elijah Hollins. Now, Hollins was good, but have a listen to these numbers. So the combination of Close, Myers, and Stengel had 50 disposals, 10 tackles, kicked 3 goals, and had 5 direct goal assists. They also had 26 score involvements between them. Myers had 10 and Stengel had 10. So 50 touches of the footy for those high half forwards playing the graveyard role. They had 10 tackles, so the pressure was there. They kicked 3 goals. and they also handed off 5 more, involved in almost all scoring chains that the Cats had. You look at the other side of things, the Carlton gang of Owies, Durden and Hollands, they only managed 32 disposals, only 2 goals, which were both kicked by Hollands, and only 1 goal assist. 15 score involvements between them, so an average of 5 each. You have a look at the Geelong guys, up 7, 7.5, 8 each. I think the efficiency of those guys, Myers and Stengel and Close, and if you talk to Geelong people, they won't talk about Jeremy Cameron. They won't talk about guys down back and Stewart and De Koning. They won't talk about the midfielders. They'll talk about how much Close and Stengel and Myers keep this group connected. When they've got the ball, they're up, they're working, they're getting back toward goal and putting pressure on, and they're getting up the ground in team defence to put pressure on, to allow the next player to drop off and be an extra player. Those 3 guys were absolutely sensational. I think they were the difference in the game when you put them beside the Carlton trio. Stark difference. I want to put on the agenda also the fact that I guess Carlton do, and I mentioned this earlier and I was told and made aware of it, they do have a lot of players out. So Carlton fans, keep sticking fat. I've stuck fat. I think you can make a grand final. I had you playing Brisbane, so you might be playing off by yourself because Brisbane are unlikely to be there. But I think Carlton can continue to get better and better and better. The Dogs and Dockers, I mentioned that game, and it was probably on paper not one many of us were looking forward to. But both teams said, bugger it, we're just going to play hard, fast, quick footy. And it was Fife and Bontempelli and Norton, Brayshaw, Sarong, all the big guns rose to the occasion. Fremantle were potent. I mentioned Clark and some of his work. He's basically at all-Australian level, probably competing with guys like Nick Blakey and Tom Stewart and Nick Floston and Lockie Whitfield for a halfback flank role. Fife turned back the clock, 37 disposals. He looked like his old dual Brownlow winning self. And one of my personal favourites, Luke Jackson, he did the job. Even though Sean Darcy was in the team, Jackson was still so impactful, and his numbers never tell the true story. So the Dockers got a good win. They needed it. The Dogs, their good players were good. Their, I guess, average players were average. Bailey Dale was sensational. Another big game from him. He's a long way removed from the guy that was wearing the sub vest only a few weeks ago. He was absolutely huge, close enough to 30 disposals, kicked a couple of goals, 1,000,000 metres gained. He needs to be locked in to that back 6 every single week because when he's playing good footy, the Dogs have a chance and they can move the ball a lot quicker. Moving on, I want to talk about, I want to stay with Fremantle for a minute because a lot has been talked about the way they play the game and the fact that they can be dour and a bit boring and a bit slow. From a coaching perspective, they've got Clark, they've got Young, Aish can run, Brayshaw, Chapman, Johnson, Sarong. They do have enough guys who can get handball receives and keep the game at speed. So I think they probably wrestle with what the coach and coaches want and what they value versus what you truly do need to value. Now, there are 3 phases to footy these days in modern footy. There's the contest, and it's always going to be number 1. So can you win the ball around the ground? Can you win a contest at a stoppage? Can you win a contest in the air in marking contests? And can you win the ball when it's loose on the ground? So when the ball spills, can you get over and win the footy? That's contested ball. When the ball's in the air, when the ball's inside the contest, and when the ball spills on the outside on the ground. Can you do that? That's always going to be number 1. Number 2, and not far behind contest, is defense. I guess defense, as we term it in the AFL, but defense in the American sports, being stable and staunch behind the ball. Can you not leak easy goals? Can you work up the ground as a forward when the opposition has got the footy and join in on defense? Can you make the ground small when the other team's got the ball and not allow them to have access to the corridor? That's number 2. And I think where some teams fall down, and I'm critical of Melbourne in this space, Fremantle in this space a little bit, Geelong before they made big adjustments in this space as well. Teams think contest and defense are right up here, and then somewhere down here, it is attack. It's team offense. It's scoring the footy. But you need to, in modern footy, with the burst and the potency that teams have, you need to be able to value offense as well. You need to value attack, because when you're attacking efficiently, it's also easier to defend. And when you're attacking efficiently, you're in less contests and you're banging yourself up a lot less. So contest is 1, defense is 2, but not 5th or 6th or 7th. At number 3, somewhere right behind the top 2 is offense, is the willingness to attack, is the willingness to move the footy with speed. And Freo need to remember that. They are 4-3. They've got Richmond and St Kilda as 2 of their next 3 opponents. So they've got some opportunities. They've got some opportunities to get the job done, to keep playing fast. Otherwise, she might be heave-ho in Freo land. For the Dogs, I just don't know. They're 3-4. They've got the Hawks and Richmond to come. They should win both, but do you really trust them to win both? I don't. I'll look ahead before I get out of here. The voice is a bit crackly, a bit funny tonight. We've got a massive game Thursday night, a showdown, a primetime standalone showdown. They've toyed with it, the AFL, as to having that showdown as a standalone. They're going for it on a Thursday night. Crows won both last year, and Port have got a couple of big injuries. Alir won't play. Connor Rozee, the captain, won't play. So that's 2 massive losses. If you were going to name 2 of Port Adelaide's most important 5, those 2 would be in there, you would think. So that's a big way to start off round 8. And then Friday night, we've got probably 93, 94, 95,000 in the house for Carlton and Collingwood, the Pies and the Blues. That's going to be an absolute barn burner. Can't wait to watch that one. I will be working, but I'll have one eye, or 1.5 eyes on the footy. And then after that, we've got the battle for the bridge, the Sydney Derby or Derby, whatever they want to call it, the Giants and the Swannies going at it. I think the winner of that will be declared by most as the number 1 seed when it comes to the premiership. And then we've got Geelong and Melbourne, 2 teams who have clashed in the finals, 2 teams who have clashed in big regular season games, and 2 teams who think they can win the premiership this year. So it's a massive, massive contest for those 2 teams. A few big games to start round 8. Cannot wait for those. What else have we got here before we move along? Oh, one last thing. Geelong and Melbourne. Harrison Petty. I was on breakfast radio last week. I think it was Friday. Now, it was Anzac morning. It was Thursday. Harrison Petty, not a forward. Not a forward. Doesn't move like a forward. Isn't playing like a forward. He's a defender, and he's a very, very good defender. A very good defender. And, ironically, he has a very good record on Jeremy Cameron. This week, the Cats play the Ds. Stephen May, obvious like-for-like matchup with Tom Hawkins. That happens. Jake Lever, he'll want to play on someone like Ollie Henry or even Brad Close and drop off, play in line with the ball. Let them lead up. He'll drop off, intercept mark, intercept spoil. That's his game. So he won't play on Cameron. Tom McDonald does not feel like a great matchup for Jeremy Cameron. I think he gets the first opportunity, first crack, but they want to have plan B ready to rock and roll, because Cameron can get up the ground and Cameron can get back and take you into situations as a key defender that you don't want to be involved in. Do you really want Tom McDonald at forward 50 stoppages trying to defend Jeremy Cameron? Do you want McDonald in space trying to defend Cameron when the ball's on the ground or the ball's moving quickly? I doubt it. The man who's got the best record on Cameron from the Ds is Harrison Petty. And he's not playing very well at all in the forward line. They're not making the game easy for him in the forward line. So I just go, McDonald forward, you can be the sacrificial lamb, quote unquote. Play forward, give us a contest, lead up at the footy, do what Petty was supposed to or trying to do, and allow Petty to go back and do a job on Jeremy Cameron. Because if you were to label the top 3 game breakers in that game, Melbourne and Geelong, Petrarca, Gawn and Cameron, whichever order you want to put them, but the man has had 17 disposals, 9 marks and kicked 5 goals last week, Jeremy Cameron. So the Ds would better have a very good plan for him, and their best plan, their most proven plan, would be Harrison Petty, who just happens to be playing at the other end of the ground. So we've got 4 beauties. We've got the Crows and the Power. We've got the Blues and the Pies, the Swans and the Giants, and then the Ds and the Cats. plenty of big games on Channel 7. Make sure you check out those Channel 7 socials, 7AFL on Twitter and Instagram, for a little look at Jordan Clark and his form. The former Cat is shaping up as a potential All-Australian this season. Thanks for following. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Keep it up. We're loving the 2024 season of footy. Make sure you keep watching and enjoying the footy.